Hello, you lovely listeners. I'm Amy. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast, where we will delve into the minds of the business people we have met in the process of launching our first card game. We will be uncovering their secrets to success, their biggest mistakes, and sharing the key lessons they have picked up en route. So, if you're looking for an engaging chinwag mixed with business insights and a good pinch of fun, you're in the right place. Let's have a really good conversation. Hello, Nick. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast.
Hey, Amy. Thanks for having me.
I'm so delighted that you joined us. So for our listeners, today we are speaking to Nick from a fabulous shop that we came across in Somerset called Teals. Just to provide a bit of backstory of how we came across Teals, Alex and I were driving back from Devon on a sort of probably 4-hour drive and ready for a food stop. And just as I was looking for the next opportunity to pull off, we saw a big sign on the road saying Teals. And with sort of about 10 seconds notice, I said, Alex, turn off, we're stopping here. And we turned the corner and stumbled across an absolute gem, which is Teals. And we were absolutely delighted, had a lovely lunch, lots of really interesting things going on there, which Nick can talk us through. And we obviously followed up with yourselves, and you obviously are now stocking our cards, which is excellent and just very much a sort of serendipity moment that we would find you on our travels. So, Nick, you can introduce Teals a little bit better, I'm sure, than I can. So tell us a bit more about what Teals does, how long you've been operating for, and some of the things you're passionate about.
So we started Teals in December 2020 is when we opened our doors. I suppose it had been in our minds for 3 to 4 years in advance of that. My wife, Ash, and I had been thinking about establishing a business like Teals for a while. And for both of us, for one reason or another, the timing was right. We'd started to become quite familiar with this part of South Somerset, where Teals is based, and had enjoyed being a part of the community. And we thought this would be a great area to bring this new brand and business to life. What we do is we're essentially a food market, a restaurant, takeaway, and a gift store, all in one roof. Different types of guests of ours think about us in different ways. So you've just given us your experience, your first experience of Teals, which was of breaking a journey from A to B with a presumably young family in the back seats of the car, starting to terrorize you and Alex, and wanting to find somewhere actually it's a really good place to break a journey. So a number of our guests think about us in those terms. We're essentially, for them, a slightly calmer, maybe more discerning without being exclusive, alternative to what you might otherwise find on a major trunk road or a motorway in England. For others, predominantly those who are more local, who visit us as a destination, actually we're very different to that. We're often a place to connect with the local area or friends or family. So particularly our local audience who, let's say they're within 5, possibly 10 miles from here, we will see them often, and they will use us for great coffee, for somebody to come and have a bite to eat, a bit of specialist grocery shopping, gift for a friend, and alongside that often we'll meet up with their friends for a bite to eat, breakfast or lunch. So we fulfill 2, I think, quite different needs, and purposefully so, because before we started the business, it's really important to us that we were combining. We were starting a purposeful business. I don't mean necessarily a philanthropic business. I mean we're making a contribution. If we're going to establish ourselves in a place, it's very important to us that we're making a contribution in that place. And so I suppose the local audience, I think, back to what is Teals, right? Functionally, we're here to feed you well, help you break your journey, offer you some interesting things at your reasonably affordable prices that you might buy as a gift for family members or friends. But ultimately, we're here to provide an experience. Otherwise, we'd be like any other stop on the road
And you touched on actually, because I will actually touched on opening at the obviously late 2020, and we all know what was going on in the world that year. You know, had you already commenced that thinking before 2020, or did this really come to life for you during that year of 2020?
So we started building in late January 2020, and first lockdown was March, I think end of March, wasn't it, 2020. So at that moment, we had put the foundations in, I think had our steel frame up on site, and we were making a decision as to whether we would bring the fabric of the building delivered, not knowing quite whether we'd be forced to stop or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And so you probably remember at that point, there's quite a lot of panic. In the construction industry, there was a real backlash against companies who kept going locally here, some of the bigger companies. So we were quite considered about how we approached it. And in the end, most of the guys who were on site at that point were small, local, self-employed businesses. And we simply said to them, look, this is the environment you're going to be working in. How do you feel about continuing or not continuing work? What's important to you? And they all said, we want to continue because it's a site. At that point, we were in a field, so you can get much safer than in a field. And we worked out how the cladders, for example, could work with a 2 meter separation. Was that feasible, and how would they do it? And in the end, we just steadily kept progressing in a very safe way at the time. And as time went on, the approach to COVID in construction eased a little bit, and things started to build a bit more momentum. Over the course of the project, we lost 2 months, and that was because the glazing factories I think our glazing was coming from Europe at that point, and the factories simply shut down. So we just missed our window to have them delivered on time. So we lost 2 months, but in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't.
Yeah, that's not too bad, really. Yeah.
So in a funny sort of way, I mean, there are a number of things, number of positives that came out of that COVID period. And one of them was we were a remote site, and we could keep building safely and steadily. So we were lucky.
So let's talk a little bit about sustainability. That's obviously something that comes across, particularly that you guys are passionate about at Teals. So tell me a little bit about what you guys do there from a sustainability point of view.
Yes, I'd sit that within our overall focus on purpose and balancing purpose and profits. We're a pending B Corp. What that means for anybody out there listening is we're a business that tries to balance up the interests of all of our stakeholders. So not just shareholders, not just owners of the business, but also local communities, team, supply chain, landlords, etc. So underneath that umbrella of purpose for us, people and planet are the two things that we really focus on. And on the planet side of things, which is where sustainability broadly sits, we've always taken the approach we want to create a business that trod lightly in its environment. And I think I'll try and paint a picture of what that means to us and a couple of examples of what we've done over the period. So what it means is, in our field in Somerset, which was a greenfield site, it was really important to us that a completely new building sat comfortably in its landscape. So you've driven that road from Devon to Cornwall. You come past that big sign that you were describing, and you see the building in the field at the end of the field. And we're lucky that we are kind of proximate to traditional old Somerset cider orchards. And in time, our plan is to build out the orchards through the car park into the field, so that if we were having this conversation in 15 years' time, you'd feel like the building was in the middle of an orchard as opposed to tied to the outside of it. So sitting comfortably in its setting was really important to us, and then how the building was created. So we had to do some work along the way. We had to cut down a few trees to improve the access off the A303 and make sure it was safe for our guests. And as part of that process, we saved all that wood. That sits in a wood store. It's being used in our wood burner through the winters. We've got about 3 to 4 years of life out of that wood. All of the branches were wood chipped down and sit in different areas of the planting beds. The soil that we had to excavate with reused for landscaping and to create nice environments externally for ourselves. The building itself is really well insulated. We've got a whole southern elevation, which is covered in solar panels that supports a significant chunk of our daytime electricity use. We chose not to put gas in. So we're electric only, and what doesn't come off the solar panels comes from renewable sources. We also, as part of our kitchen mix, we have a wood oven, and that enables us to cook from sustainably sourced wood without reference to electricity. There are ways in which we can use that wood oven through high heat and low heat. So right now on our menu, we've got I tried it yesterday actually, delicious hummus dish with flatbread with a bit of herb oil on it. It's delicious. So that's cooked at high heat, but equally, come the end of the day, we can be using the residual heat in that wood oven because it stays warm overnight. Wow. To be slow roasting X, Y, and Z, and not a highly controllable environment like a catering oven would be, but really enhancing for taste. So I suppose that's an example of us trying to squeeze as much benefit out of a single source by using good materials. That wood oven is it was an expensive piece of kit for us to invest in the word go, but it's giving us a lot more value than simply cooking pizzas in it. If that makes sense.
That's just absolutely fantastic. We touched on, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about food sources and things as well, of where some of the produce and locally comes from.
Yeah, so if you think about Teals, why we're here, why do we exist? Well, we're here functionally, we do things, but actually what we're here to do is to create experiences and brighten people's days. We use the phrase adding colour quite a lot in our business. If someone leaves us and we feel that we've added colour to their day, then we've done a good job in wherever that materialised in the business.
I love that. We do love colour in our world as well. Yeah,
I can see that from your That's good. And I think, so what does that mean in practical terms? Well, one of the components is we would use this phrase at our end, making local a destination. So in Somerset, so how do we make Somerset a destination for somebody like you and your family who are passing through, without being in any way preachy, but just informing where we can and enhancing your experience by virtue of that? Because we do have, it is, as I was describing earlier, it's a wonderful part of England at the moment, and there genuinely are some great producers and makers around us who we enjoy celebrating. And that's so therefore connecting, how we connect you as a guest to our local farm. This is a relevant example because I've just handed out a plate of pink fir squashed and roasted, wood-fired roasted potatoes to a number of guests here to see what they think of them. But that's a really good example that in offering a plate of taster potatoes, I had the opportunity with those guests to explain that those potatoes had been literally come out of the ground, they've been dug this morning. It can be any fresher than today, and got an opportunity to explain how the kitchen team had kind of carefully treated those and cooked them and made the best of them, and then put them on a plate and said, "Oh, well, how do you enjoy that?" And thumbs up from everybody in terms of the taste. But that as an example of something that I think as a business we aspire to do, which is to connect you in some way to producers and makers around us in a way that's relevant to you. All of those guys that I was describing here who tried the potatoes were all eating. They were here to be fed. So it was a relevant thing to to put in front of them. And as a result, they will have left understanding a bit more about pink fir, even if it's just pink fir potatoes are in season, or aren't pink fir potatoes an odd shape, or isn't that a great alternative to chips? Whatever they've left with, we've been able to share a part of Somerset with them, and they've taken it away with them, and that's really important to us. And we have a whole host of small, typically independent small producers in this part of the world that we can we're lucky that we've got such a big pool, and every day we're looking at ways in which we can expose them to our guests coming through the door.
Fantastic. What is it that you love the most about what you've created at Teals?
I think Ash and I speak for Ash and I in the same breath. I think I go back to that conversation that Ash had earlier this week with that couple who were going to uproot themselves to Somerset. Why is that? That's very rewarding. If you're a founder of a business and somebody is reflecting positively on the experience that they've had for whatever reason, that's incredibly rewarding. And we do get to see that in immediacy. We're lucky, being the type of business that we are, that we can, if we do a good job, we will get that and we will hear it regularly. And not all businesses or sectors have that opportunity. So I think that's the here and now of what we really enjoy. I think the other component, which is probably more personal to me, is how much more we can give. It's interesting. We've gone through the business cycle of, we started in the pandemic, we've had 6 months where we've sort of had one of our hands tied behind our back in terms of trading, with hospitality closed in that period. And then we've had our first full year, which you might otherwise think, well, that's a startup year, right? So you've been through this journey, you guys. Yeah. It's the highest risk moment where in our case, we put a reasonable sum of money into a building and started to build a team in the hope that people would come and visit us, and fortunately that they have. But we got through that first startup year relatively unscathed, in fact ahead of where we expected. So that enabled us in year 2 to start making some small tweaks across the business in all areas where we saw opportunities for improvement. I think now we're at a really interesting point, and this is bringing back to your question about what do you love about it. This is the point where, as a business, we can say legitimately, look, we've got a stable, in the absence of major shocks, we've got a reasonably stable business. We know we're doing a good job. We know that we're being recommended. We know that our footfall is steadily and organically increasing. Let's go back to our first principles of why we started the business, that balance of purpose and profit, and really examine how we're delivering on that purpose point, and have we got the balance right? And if we haven't, in what areas might we consider dialing up a little bit? And I think this is the really exciting opportunity for me personally, because I can see that if you just take the issues of climate change and food system in this country, both major threats in one way or another, and often linked, I found myself asking myself the question: how legitimately, what role legitimately can Teals play in that, in confronting those two major issues? Does it have a legitimate voice yet? Have we earned our place and our right to speak? And if so, how would we choose to do so with the maximum impact? And I've anchored around food system because, as a retailer, and a hospitality business, we're in a really, we've got a really unusual opportunity, and quite a singular one, because we sit between you and, in the example that I was giving earlier, the pink fir potatoes, you and Rory. Rory's our local farmer. He's our landlord here. One of the crops he grows is potatoes. We can influence both ways, right? So we can influence you as a customer and educate you if you're open to it. We're not preachy. you're open to it, and we sense that you're willing to absorb that information, we can talk to you about pink fir potatoes. With Rory going the other way, the reason the pink fir potatoes are in the field is because we said as a retailer, look, we want to build a stronger connection. Potatoes are one of your strong points, and what can we do to create more excitement around that and bring that to our guests? And as a result, we have a row of pink fir potatoes that wouldn't have existed before. We're going to take that a step further, and this will appeal to you with your conversations for kids. We're going to take that a step further. Ash came up with this great idea to pick your own spuds, and
brilliant.
And so we're gonna put a gate in the fence out into the field, and for a period of time where these particular variety of potatoes can be harvested, we're going to enable our guests to go in, pick 1 or 2 kilos of fresh out of the ground potatoes, and take them home, and you cook them there and then. So what does that do? It gives us an opportunity to expose, look, this is a great farm. They do a really good job producing really good food. The children in your family can have a better understanding of where a potato comes from, right? And it doesn't have to be only a chip. And at the same time, we can be productive as a business. And so that's going forward. We're going to be doing more work in that arena of food systems. It's a massive challenge, just like climate change. You think, well, where do you pick off wins along the way? And genuinely, I think we can do that as a business. And another example to bring that to life, I recently did a panel discussion with a really great organization called Planted, and they have a country version of it every year. And the question that was posed to the panel was, how can we balance up food system with affordable food that's high quality and supports local producers? And before I did that discussion, I rang up one of our milk suppliers. We have organic milk that we sell out of a milk machine in the store, and we use it for our coffees and in the kitchen. I rang up Matt and said, tell me about your world at the moment, because I know it's difficult. I know your prices have increased, but I'm keen to understand how that's come about. And he very openly shared a story with me about how milk production has changed over the last 12 to 18 months and the pressures put upon it. His cows are they're robotically milked. They bring themselves in and out from the fields. So that makes them more relaxed and the quality of milk better. And the milk is high nutritional value, good for you, easy to digest in a way that some other more processed milks aren't, and good for the planet. And he explained to me that only 10% of his income from his production comes from people like us, independent retailers or coffee shops or milk machines. 90% comes from a cooperative that picks up 90% of the milk. Now, in the intervening year, the cooperative has the cost of production has increased, and the cooperative has driven their price down. So this particular farmer now makes a loss on 90% of their production. And so the only reason that they're alive is because of the 10% going to coffee shops, people like us, and milk machines, which is indicative. That really puts into context, one element of the food system, why it's hard work for farmers, and the product is amazing. So we had a quick conversation. I said, okay, what's the solution, Matt? And in the end, the simple solution is, well, imagine if you could turn that 10% that's going to farm shops, coffee shops and milk machines into 100%. Actually, you could then afford to reduce the price to all of those entities, and those guys would be able to sell their milk to you as a guest at a lower price. And suddenly you'd end up with better, stronger nutrition for families in the local area, a better version of a product that you would buy in the supermarket for actually a lower price. Can you believe it? and a business that gets to thrive in the middle. Sorry, a producer that gets to thrive and be sustainable and reduce its anxieties about what the future might hold. And what sits in the middle is Teals. We don't need to make any more or less money. We're quite happy with the margin that we make on that milk, and happy to pass benefits on to our guests along the way. So it's quite encouraging that there are potentially solutions out there, but it's also quite challenging to when you understand the detail of what some of these farmers and producers are having to go through. So if we can help in that process, then we will.
And that's just amazing. And just, it's extremely inspirational to hear just even the conversations that you're going out and having there with people and, really striving to make a difference, in the community for the here and now, but also the future. It really is very aspirational. People like yourself are trying to think that way and make changes. There's so much we have covered, both just from yourselves as a business, but equally these other very important topics that you've highlighted about food systems. And I think what you've shared there, hopefully will actually be more of an education as well to people listening. But obviously the other thing I really want to discuss on this podcast is to play a couple of really good conversation cards to you. So I've pulled out 3 different questions. So these are my questions. Number 1, what do you think has been the biggest technological development in your lifetime?
The biggest technological development, fundamentally, I think when I was a kid, we probably had a phone on the wall. It's the reality with a long lead, and the ability to connect at will. For me personally, is probably the thing that's changed the most over that period of time. The difference between a phone on the lead and an iPhone or whatever it is, and the ability to connect in a myriad of different ways through that device. That opportunity didn't exist when I was a kid.
No, it's amazing. And even discussions with my mother-in-law, who had the phone in the street. So you'd have to be arranging what time someone might call you and walk to the end of the street. And if someone else was on the phone, you're knocking for them to get off the phone. So, I think we take it for granted, don't we? And to think, how that has changed in that time. So we've chatted a bit about food, actually. But number 2, what is the weirdest thing you have ever eaten?
Do you really want to know? So when I was in my mid-20s, I and a group after university, myself and a group of 5 other friends drove from Bristol down to East Africa. So we drove. You wouldn't be able to do that journey now, sadly, because of the security situation. But we went down through the Sahara and then through the Central African Republic and the Congo, which were all reasonably inhospitable places where the people were wonderful. But I do remember coming across in our language, we'd term it a barbecue stall in Congo, and looking at the variety of things that were hanging up and not really understanding what I was purchasing. I had a good grasp of French, but I couldn't understand. There's no way I could understand the local dialect. And I ate something, and then eventually, because it was a bit chewy, you'll get the gist of this pretty quickly. It was a bit chewy, and eventually we got to understand that it was some form of bushmeat penis. Who the recipient, not recipient, but whose it was, what variety of animal. It could have been literally anything, but I can tell you it wouldn't have been a cow, goat, or sheep. It would have been, it would have been something from the forest that met its unfortunate end. That's probably the most challenging thing I've eaten.
Did it taste nice? Did you manage to finish eating it?
No, it's really chewy. Had no aesthetic qualities to it at all.
So you won't be able to get.
I'm sure it had a good protein content. But that's it.
It won't be on the Teals menu anytime soon, then.
Yeah, no.
And question number 3: who has had the biggest influence on your life?
That's really interesting because I I recently asked myself that question. Actually, I asked it in a slightly different way. I said, who in my life, I was going through an exercise whilst we were on holiday, and just reminding myself about all the things that made me happy and that we'd want to concentrate on. I'm coming up to 50, so I thought, well, the next 10 years, let's make them really good. And through that exercise, actually, I had quite a variety of people, but I settled on probably my first real boss. So after I left university, I got a job at an international law firm in London called Freshfields, really credible firm, one of the what they call Magic Circles, and one of the top 5 in the country, and it was an international firm. And my boss there was a guy called Tim Cole, and Tim was just one of those people. I had never thought of going into HR, of working with people. I ended up in very entry-level administrative role when I got in there, but after about 6 months, Tim's had knocked on my door and said, have you ever considered a career in people? And I said, well, if I'm honest, no, but what's involved? And he transferred me into his team. And by the time I left, actually, I was doing a really fulfilling job. And so that's why Tim, I think, probably unknowingly, had a really strong material impact on me in my career, I would say.
Oh, fantastic. Well, the final question, which I always like to ask our guest, is if you could ask any person, dead or alive, a question, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Can I give 2 answers to that, a dead and an alive?
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay. So an alive, I'd have to be asking Rishi Sunak why he's not got climate on one of his 5 pledges. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I think for all his positive attributes and some of the things that he is trying to do and the integrity that he brings with it, I just think it's such an awful miss not to have that on his 5 pledges somewhere, because it's so critical to us going forward to find answers to that question. So I definitely want to ask him that. And I think dead, our original landlord here, a chap called Archie Montgomery, is famous. His brother makes the cheese. Archie is a long-standing, terrific person in the local community and sadly passed away a couple of years ago now. I'd be asking him how we could combine forces. He had a reputation for being quite a maverick. He was he was a balloonist. He was unafraid to do new things, challenge his own thinking. I think he's passed that on to Rory, his son, who's now looking after the farm. But Rory's at the beginning of his career and sort of understanding of farming. So he's not quite got the years of experience. Archie was 65 when he passed away. So all of that life experience, and I'd be asking him, how can we join forces? Are you interested? Are you motivated to help change the food system in this part of Somerset? Are you prepared to be a leader in that? And how could we team up to bring a retail and hospitality business alongside a farmer and see if we can actually start moving the dial in some of these areas around pesticides and production, what's being made available, how can local people access it more easily. And my sense is that he would have had some really he'd been really engaged by that question, and he'd have some really interesting answers to it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time today, Nick. It has really been fascinating to hear just all of the things that you have going on at Teals. I've certainly learned quite a bit on this, just on this call. How can people find Teals or connect with Teals?
So if you want to get a bit of a feel for what we do, a bit more of a feel, then you can find us on Instagram, Teals_store. You could check out our website, teals.co.uk. If you're in our part of the world or you're moving through it, we're roughly halfway from London to Devon and Cornwall on the A303, and we'd be delighted to see anybody popping through the door, see if we can look after you on your journey. I would say the most effective way to get a feel for what type of business we are would be on Instagram. It's the social media platform that we probably use the most. It's kind of wonderfully colourful, has some great stories in it. It's give you a great reflection of our values and the way that we go about things here.
That's brilliant. Well, I'll include all of those links on the show notes as well. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
No worries. It's been fun. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on today's guests. And if really good conversations are your thing, hit subscribe and join us next time for more business journeys, insights and banter.